Imagine two men standing side by side. Both are 70 years old. The first man, let's call him Steve A., is standing on a beach in California, waxing a surfboard. He moves with fluid precision, his mind is razor sharp, and his heart beats with the steady, powerful rhythm of a drum. He looks at the ocean not with fear, but with anticipation. Then there is the second man, Steve B. He is gasping for air, just trying to walk to his mailbox. He is frail, his memory is a dense fog, and his joints feel like they are filled with broken glass. He spends his days managing medications and his nights worrying about being a burden to his children. We look at these two men and we tell ourselves a comforting lie. We say, well, Steve A. just got lucky. He must have incredible genetics. We assume the slow, painful decay of the second man is inevitable, just the cruel price of admission for getting old. But science has proven that assumption is a lie. In fact, deep investigative research into longevity reveals that 70% of how you age, whether you end up on the surfboard or trapped in a hospital bed, is completely under your control. The tragedy isn't that we age. The tragedy is that we are choosing to decay without even realizing it. Most of you watching this are disciplined. You've worked hard your whole lives, built careers, raised families, and saved money for retirement. But what is the point of a healthy 401k if your body is bankrupt? We are going to strip away the excuses today. We are going to look at the control protocol, a blueprint that proves aging is optional. To understand the stakes, we have to look at one of the most terrifying studies ever conducted in human physiology. It is known as the Dallas Bed Rest Study. This isn't just data, it is a prophecy for the modern man. Researchers took 5 healthy, strong young men and put them to bed for 3 weeks. This wasn't a vacation. They weren't allowed to leave the bed for anything. For 21 days, they did absolutely nothing. The result? It was catastrophic. In just 3 weeks, their cardiovascular systems aged the equivalent of 30 years. Think about that for a second. 3 weeks of doing nothing did the same damage to their hearts and lungs as 3 decades of life. They essentially developed the physiology of old men in less than a month. This reveals a hidden danger that is likely sitting in the room with you right now. It isn't just laziness. It is a biological disease called sedentaryism. When you sit for prolonged periods, at your desk, in your car, on the couch, you aren't just resting. You are sending a loud, clear signal to your biological software to execute the decay program. Your body thinks it is dying, so it begins to shut down. Statistically, having low cardiorespiratory fitness kills more people than smoking, diabetes, or heart disease combined. It is the silent assassin waiting in your chair. But here is the paradox. If 3 weeks of inaction can age you by 30 years, what happens if we reverse the signal? What happens if we input a code of radical growth? The answer lies in a specific protocol that didn't just stop the clock in clinical trials. It actually turned it back by 2 decades. To understand how to flip this switch, we first have to look at the single most powerful drug in existence and why you can't buy it in a pill. If you could bottle the effects of vigorous exercise, it would be the most valuable pharmaceutical on earth. It would bankrupt the makers of Ozempic, statins, and antidepressants overnight. But the problem is most men are taking the wrong dose. You see, the majority of the population engages in what experts call garbage miles. This is that moderate intensity zone, like a light jog or reading a magazine on the elliptical, where you can still hold a conversation. It feels like work, it burns some calories, but for 40% of people, this garbage mile approach does absolutely nothing to improve their cardiorespiratory fitness. It's a coin toss. You are putting in the time, you are showing up, but the biological software isn't updating. It's like trying to upgrade your computer by just wiping the screen with a cloth. To rewrite the code, you need intensity. Enter the Norwegian 4x4 protocol. This isn't just a workout, it is a molecular signaling event. The structure is deceptively simple, but executing it requires the kind of discipline I know you have. You perform 4 minutes of high-intensity work. We're talking about reaching a point where you cannot speak in full sentences, where your heart is pounding at 90% of its max. Then, you recover for 3 minutes. You repeat this cycle 4 times. Why this specific structure? Because it forces your body to tap into a unique fuel source that has been misunderstood for decades: lactate. For years, gym teachers and coaches told us that lactate was the enemy. They said it was the waste product that caused the burn in your muscles. They were wrong. Science now shows that lactate is actually a premium fuel, a kind of brain fertilizer. When you push your body into that high-intensity zone, your muscles flood the system with lactate. Instead of being waste, this molecule travels up to your brain and crosses the blood-brain barrier. Once it's there, it triggers the release of a magical protein called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF. Think of BDNF as Miracle-Gro for your neurons. It doesn't just protect your brain, it signals the growth of new brain cells, a process we once thought was impossible in adults. You are literally growing a younger brain by moving your body, and the effects on the heart are even more profound. In a landmark study involving 50-year-olds, men just like many of you, participants who followed this specific high-intensity protocol for 2 years didn't just get fitter. They reversed the stiffness of their hearts by 20 years. They essentially built a 30-year-old heart inside a 50-year-old chest. This is the difference between maintenance and transformation. You aren't just slowing the decline, you are actively rebooting the hardware. Imagine having the engine you had in your 30s, simply by committing to 16 minutes of hard work a few times a week. But a Ferrari engine is useless if you pour sand in the gas tank. And right now, 70% of you are running on empty without even knowing it. The scary truth about aging is that it's rarely one big catastrophic event that takes you out. It's the accumulation of silent deficiencies, invisible cracks in the foundation that you don't notice until the house collapses. You might feel it already. Maybe it's a lack of morning vitality. Maybe it's a subtle brain fog that makes it hard to focus on complex tasks. The first and most critical of these cracks is vitamin D. We call it a vitamin, but that's a misnomer. It's actually a potent steroid hormone that controls over 5% of your human genome. It regulates the instructions for your immune system, your bone density, and most importantly, your brain health. Here is the terrifying statistic. 70% of the population is insufficient in vitamin D. We spend our lives indoors, shielded from the sun, and our levels plummet. The consequence isn't just a weak immune system. Studies show that vitamin D deficiency is linked to an 80% increased risk of dementia. That is not a small margin. That is a massive, gaping vulnerability. By simply letting your levels drop, you are nearly doubling your chance of losing your mind in your later years. It's an unforced error of the highest order. You wouldn't drive your car with the oil light on, yet millions of men are driving their bodies with their hormonal tank on empty. But there is another silent killer, one that hides in plain sight. It's your omega-3 index. You might think, I eat fish sometimes, I'm fine. But are you? Researchers have discovered something that should shake you to your core. It's called the smoker's paradox. We all know smoking is deadly. It destroys your lungs, ravages your cells, and hardens your arteries. But when scientists looked at mortality data, they found something shocking. A smoker with high levels of omega-3 fatty acids had the same life expectancy as a non-smoker with low omega-3s. Let that sink in. Having a low omega-3 index is just as dangerous to your longevity as smoking cigarettes. If you aren't eating fatty fish like salmon or taking a high-quality supplement, you are effectively smoking a pack a day in terms of your mortality risk. It's a silent emergency. And while these deficiencies are starving your cells, there is something else actively rusting them away. It's called glycation. This is what happens when you bombard your system with refined sugars and processed carbohydrates. The sugar molecules bind to proteins in your body and create sticky, dysfunctional structures. Think of it like caramelizing an onion in a pan. It turns brown and stiff. That is literally happening to your tissues. This sugar rust stiffens the collagen in your heart and clogs the delicate vessels in your brain. And let's be honest about what stiff arteries mean for a man. It's not just about heart attacks. It's about blood flow everywhere. If the pipes are rusty, nothing works like it used to, not your brain, and certainly not your sexual vitality. As we age, the hippocampus, the memory center of the brain, naturally shrinks by about 1 to 2% per year. But high sugar intake accelerates this shrinking. You are literally eating away your memories and your manhood. The fix isn't complicated, but it requires the discipline you already apply to your finances or your career. A simple fish oil supplement of 2 grams a day and vitamin D supplementation can slash these risks in half. You have the power to stop the rust and refuel the tank. But we aren't done yet. We've fixed the engine and cleaned the fuel. But what if you need a sudden burst of superintelligence? What if you haven't slept in 24 hours and need to perform at your peak? There is a hack for that too. To access this next level of performance, we have to abandon the stereotypes we see in the gym locker room. For years, we've looked at creatine as a bro supplement, a white powder for bodybuilders who want to get swole. You might have ignored it because you don't care about having massive biceps. You care about functional strength. But that view is tragically limited. Creatine is not just for muscles. It is a backup battery for your brain. Your brain is an energy hog. It consumes 20% of your body's energy despite being only 2% of your weight. When you are tired, stressed, or aging, your brain's energy currency, a molecule called ATP, starts to run low. This is brain fog. This is that moment when a word is on the tip of your tongue but you can't find it. Creatine acts as a rapid-fire charger, donating energy to your neurons when they are under siege. A fascinating study took people and sleep-deprived them for 21 hours. Usually, this level of exhaustion turns you into a zombie. But the group that took creatine didn't just survive the sleep deprivation. They actually outperformed the well-rested group on cognitive tasks. It acted as a neurological armor, protecting the brain from the chaos of fatigue. It makes you sharper, faster, and more resilient, proving that this simple molecule is one of the most underrated longevity tools in our arsenal. It's not about vanity. It's about cognitive dominance. And speaking of energy, we need to talk about the K word, keto. I know many of you are already experimenting with fasting. You've felt the clarity that comes at hour 18 or 24 of a fast. That clarity isn't magic, it's biology. When you restrict carbohydrates or practice fasting, your body switches from burning dirty glucose to burning a cleaner, more efficient fuel called ketones, specifically one called beta-hydroxybutyrate. Imagine your brain as an old house with faulty wiring. Trying to run it on glucose is like plugging a space heater into a frayed outlet. You get sparks, inflammation, and damage. But ketones bypass that old wiring entirely. They are a superfuel that enters the mitochondria directly, reducing inflammation and triggering repair processes. This is why you feel that surge of focus when you skip breakfast or push your eating window back. You aren't starving yourself, you are fueling yourself with premium gas. Even if you don't follow a strict keto diet, utilizing tools like exogenous ketones or intermittent fasting can give your aging brain a reprieve from the constant assault of sugar. It's about metabolic flexibility, the ability to switch fuel sources on demand. That is the definition of biological resilience. Finally, we have to address the skeptics who say multivitamins are just expensive urine. I get it, you're practical. You don't want to waste money on things that don't work. For a long time, the data was murky. But recent large-scale clinical trials have silenced the critics. These studies showed that a simple daily multivitamin could slow cognitive aging by the equivalent of 2 to 5 years. It's not a magic bullet, but think of it as a cheap insurance policy. It fills the micro gaps in your diet, the zinc you missed, the magnesium you didn't get, and ensures the biological machinery keeps humming. It's a small investment for a massive return, and for a man who understands ROI, it's a no-brainer. This sounds like a lot of science. We've talked about cellular signaling, hormonal deficiencies, and metabolic switching. But when you zoom out, it all comes down to a choice between two very different futures. Let's go back to those two men we imagined at the beginning. Let's call them Steve A and Steve B. Steve A chose the protocol. He didn't have perfect genetics, but he rewrote his code. At 90 years old, he is still surfing. He carries his own luggage at the airport. He remembers his great-grandchildren's names. He is independent. When the end comes, it comes quickly, a sudden drop-off at the very end of a long, vibrant life. This is what scientists call compressed morbidity. He squeezed all the sickness into the very last moments, maximizing his time as a capable, strong man. Then there is Steve B. He ignored the protocol. He bought into the myth that aging is inevitable. By 60, he's losing his keys. By 70, he can't stand up from the floor without a groan. He spends his last 15 years in what we call the health span gap. He is technically alive, but he is miserable. He is trapped in a body that is slowly shutting down, a prisoner of his own biology. He has lost his independence, and that is the ultimate nightmare for any self-respecting man. The research is clear. Genetics load the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. You control 70% of this outcome. You are the architect of your own decline or your own renaissance. But here is the catch. You cannot wait for the diagnosis. You cannot wait until the heart stiffens or the memory fades. You have to treat sedentaryism and deficiency like a cancer before it metastasizes. You have to move the body to signal life. You have to fuel the brain to stop the rust. You have to take the reins. So, I have one question for you. Which Steve are you going to be? The choice isn't made in 10 years. It's made right now, when you decide whether to sit on the couch or get up and move. Don't let your software rot. Move the body, fuel the brain, and rewrite your code. If you want to dive deeper into the tools we discussed and arm yourself with the science of longevity, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next breakdown. Hit the like button to help the algorithm save a life today. Click on the video on your screen to keep the momentum going. I'll see you there.